Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ty Eversole. I'm so glad that you're here.
Yeah,
I
thanks for having me.
I've been really actually excited to pick your brain. We started connecting again on, Instagram somewhat recently, but I've been following along with you for since our paths kind of diverged at our I'll call it our corporate
Our
jobs.
our original
Yeah,
marketing
yeah.
stint. Yeah.
But just to kind of tee it up and paint a picture for why I don't even know if you know why I'm so excited to pick your brain. So I'm going to share it. But just so everyone knows, so Ty is the marketing project manager at Osprey Packs, which if you're unfamiliar with Osprey Packs, familiarize yourself with them. Awesome products, awesome company, cool culture. Um, but I'm especially excited to pick your brain for a few different reasons. One is I've sort of always admired your adventurous spirit.
Thanks.
When we worked together, I don't know, I got to experience a little bit of it. And maybe my appreciation for it has grown, or your affinity for it has grown, or both. But it's been cool to see how involved you are in such a diverse, I don't know, diverse world of what I'll call adventure sports. So for everybody listening, it's so fun. And if you're not following Ty on Instagram, you should, because just for the adventure, side of it. But I mean, I've seen you're so involved in Protect Our Winters. You are a mountain biker. You're a raft, a river rafter, and you do overnight river rafting also, which I've always envied and like loved to see that.
Oh, we'll have to get you
Um,
on a trip one of these
I would
days.
love it. Sign me up. Ultra runner and all of that stuff. But what I'm especially excited to dive in on and to pick your brain on is there's also always these underlying tones with your Native American heritage and the Navajo culture specifically, which I just have such a enormous affinity for. And I just think it's been fun for me to kind of observe from a distance, these overlapping worlds that on a lot of levels I think it's unique. The adventurer is a little bit of a niche category anyway. The
Mhm.
ultra endurance athlete is a niche category anyway. The Navajo Native American culture side of things is niche also. I've got to imagine, that Venn diagram where they overlap in terms of people that do what you do with your background is it's a small group of people, and I admire the heck out of it. So that's kind of the tee up. I would love to hear from you because I'm especially interested in how your hobbies and your lifestyle and how it ties in and kind of relates with your culture and your background and things like that. So what I'd love to hear is, have you always been what I'll call an adventurer? And is that even a fair word for it? How should I describe it? But um, has that always been who you are? Like to walk me into kind of like how you've found these, I don't know, the lifestyle that you're living now, and the passion that you have for it, and where all that came from.
Yeah. I think let's start from the beginning. So first off, I'm going to introduce myself in Navajo. Yeah, that's basically me introducing myself and my four clans, Navajo culture. We have four clans that are passed down through our mother's side. We're a matrilineal society. And so I owe a lot to my mom when it comes to who I am today. And when I think about my adventurous side, she was a cross country runner growing up, and that got me into the trail running side of things. We grew up in a super small little town in New Mexico called Blue Water Village, and so we had these dirt back roads that we would run on, and she definitely just inspired me to start getting into running. And then from there, moving to Durango in middle school, I started to really see that adventure side come out. There's just so much to do in this area, and so trail running led to mountain biking. Uh, that led to wanting to get out in the mountains, see everything that this area had to offer, and then yeah, just getting into rafting and wanting to push myself and go go the distance, and starting to really push myself into ultra running, long distance mountain biking, aka bike packing, and then yeah, the overnight raft trips you talk about.
And also, speed packing.
Fast
the
packing.
fast packing.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been a new one. And shameless plug here, but Osprey just came out with a really great fast pack called the Talon Tempest Velocity, which is my favorite pack that they've created so far. We took that down to Havasu this past fall, and it was really cool to carry everything that we needed on our backs while being able to run. So covering, extra mileage, people with their huge backpacks going down there, just 50, 60 pound packs were so envious of us, thinking we were only doing a day trip. And we're like, no, we're down here for, 3 days, and we've got everything we need to live off of, just right in our packs. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
I got to go to have a soup
Cool.
um long time ago, and full transparency, it was before I fully appreciated the cultural significance of it. So I would love to go back, now as a I don't know, I'm now that I've grown up, you know what
Oh,
I mean?
definitely.
Because it's such a cool place. Is that so? Well, actually, first of all, with the fast packing, did you get to do that for work, or did that have to? Was that a
That was pleasure.
okay?
Yeah, that was have a Supai. It's on a permitted system, and so we actually gotten permits. I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, and then it got pushed due to COVID, just with the restrictions being super tight down there, and then all the permits that had gotten pushed from the pandemic, and so that trip had been delayed. I think either a year or 2 years. So being able to go down there, we had gotten the permits before I'd even started working at Osprey. I've been there just over a year, so that was a trip in the making.
Yeah,
It took a while to
awesome.
get down there.
On that trip specifically, and this is where there's so many like little things that I'm excited to learn more about. And you'll have to forgive me because I'm for sure gonna butcher terminology and
Oh
all
no,
of that stuff. But
yeah, and learning is
yeah,
everyone's
it's
always
a
learning.
genuine intention to learn. But on that trip, you had mentioned bringing there's a post where you brought, and now it's something with cultural significance. You probably already know what I'm referring to, but
It was probably my Tadadine bag. So it's a little corn pollen bag that I carry with me. Made out of rawhide that my Che, or my grandfather, my great grandfather, had given to me when I was a young girl. We go through a ceremony called a kinalta, which is a womanhood ceremony, and so this little corn pollen bag that I carry with me, that's what we use to do our corn pollen offerings to the Diandine, which are the our holy people, our gods, and so I carry that with me on all of my adventures, whether it's a half marathon or a 50K, or going down to Havasupai, or my backpacking trips and things like that. So, yeah, I've always got it on me.
tell me more about the pollen. Is it a ritual? Is it a something you always just have with you? Do you do things with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar, it's similar to a prayer. In most religions, you've got different ways of praying. And so when it comes to the corn pollen offering, you face to the east. Most of the time it happens in the sunrise. In Dene, or Navajo culture, we believe that our holy people live in the light between the darkness and the dawn. And so, we wake up at sunrise and we'll offer a corn pollen offering, um, just trying to think good thoughts, and keep our loved ones in our thoughts and our minds. And so when I travel to these places, knowing that there were my ancestors, or other indigenous ancestors that used to live on these lands and walk on these lands, it's just my way of paying my own respects to them as well, and also while paying respects to my own culture.
Yeah, I love that. I saw a while, speaking of, all of the lands and the culture and the ancestors and things like that. Again, I'm going to butcher it, but I saw a while back that you basically had a bucket list of summiting the sacred peaks, for lack of a better term. Did I get that even close?
Yeah.
But there's I believe seven there are within not the current Navajo reservation, but the ancestral
Traditional
lands.
homelands.
Yeah, like where and you made it a point to, I believe, summit all of them, right? Tell me.
Yeah, so there's actually six. I summited the four peaks that are sacred mountains that are kind of the termini of the or the premise of the traditional homelands, which are Dnepr. And so those are all, they also serve as the four cardinal directions. And so I did that during COVID to fundraise for a nonprofit called Adopt a Native Elder, because the our Indigenous elders definitely got struck the hardest when COVID came around. A lot of them live without running water, without access to transportation to stores and things like that. And so, Adopt a Native Elder was doing a really good job of delivering firewood, delivering supplies during the pandemic, and just keeping them safe as well. Knowing that they were much more likely to catch COVID during that time. So the four sacred mountains, we've got Cisnajina, which is Blanca in the east. That's our sunrise mountain.
Say it again.
Cisnajina. So, yeah, and that one's over by Alamosa. It was the hardest one, 14,000, one of a 14er and 14,000 plus feet, and we started with that one and took about 9 hours to do because it's a little bit of a treacherous one to get up, but we started with that one, and then down in the south is Tsutsir, which is Mount Taylor. That's actually the mountain that I grew up closest to, down by Grants, New Mexico. And then in the west, you have Dikoslid, which is the San Francisco Peaks over by Flagstaff. And then the one that we live closest to now, which is Debenitsa, which is Hesperus Peak. Yeah, and probably my favorite. I love that mountain so much.
I was going to say I'm at least familiar with one of them.
Yeah.
one of on Mount Taylor don't you run an ultra, or haven't you in the past ran an ultra on Mount Taylor too?
Yeah, I've done it's called the Mount Taylor 50K. And I've done it twice. If you combine that with the quadrathlon that they do in February over President's Day weekend, you get a scarf. So,
Oh, cool.
as a fellow ultra runner yourself, we definitely are in it a little bit for the swag.
Oh yeah.
The belt buckles and everything. So that scarf is definitely probably one of my prized possessions.
How did you, because I definitely understand like I don't know, the draw for adventure and, the diversity and all of that. Where did things start transitioning for you into the ultra distances? And tell me more about your ultra running.
Yeah, that's it's kind of funny. You were there for it without really knowing it. So we both worked at BCI Media. And I just started working for Adventure Pro Mag, which was one of our print publications. And Brandon, who was the editor in chief at the time, had told me about this run called the Monument Valley Ultra. And he's like, "Oh, it's a 50K." Like,
That's next weekend.
it is next weekend. Yeah. Are you gonna be able to do it? No. Oh.
I'm injured.
Yeah.
It's not about me today, but anyway, yeah, no running at least for the next few days for me.
Yeah. Sending you healing vibes.
Thank you.
But yeah, Brandon had told me about this 50K in Monument Valley, and he's like, "Oh, it's fine. Like you can run it. It's 30 miles." And I had never done a distance that far before. And
What's the furthest you had ran before then?
before that, it was Imogene Pass, which is 17.1.
Wow. So you went from 17
Pretty
to
much
a
doubled
50K.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Had never done a marathon before and sent it on this one. And
what a great setting for
oh my God, it
for a
was
first
amazing.
50K.
So pretty. Yeah. I will say it was very sandy though. I got lots of blisters. I chafed. I had no idea how to, really prep or run an ultra before that. So it was kind of trial by fire. Learned a lot of lessons. Didn't run super fast. I learned that it was okay to walk during ultras.
Yeah. That's
Which
the best part about it.
Yeah. Just take your time, like enjoy the scenery, but yeah, learned a lot of lessons. And then from there, it became the need to just better my time, but then also using ultras to see places that I might not have really gotten the chance to see before.
Yeah.
So, coming back to the Mount Taylor 50K, even though I had lived at the base of that mountain for the first 11 years of my life, I had never really been up in that area before that. And so 50Ks, 50 milers, they've all been a really great opportunity to see really cool places. And it's been fun.
Yeah. Well, and I would imagine, I mean, obviously there's cultural significance of the Monument Valley 50K at that stage, because, and maybe I'm jumping to conclusions, but it does seem like there's kind of, I think pride would be a fair word of, that you're proud of your heritage and culture, especially when you're, adventuring and running. did the first one being in Monument Valley have anything to do with that? Like looking
Yeah,
back, I don't know.
a little bit. And I'm going to come back to the fact that I said that my mom had really gotten me into running. Running is also really tied to my Diné culture. The Kinalta, the womanhood ceremony that I talked about, running is actually a big part of that. You wake up every morning, greet the sunrise, run to the sunrise, and then run back, and that's how you start. The
What does
every
that mean?
the
Run to the sunrise and then run back.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Or
in the Kinalta ceremony, it's you know just helping with setting, you know, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Um, but just teaching you lessons to wake up early, to be there with the holy ones when you wake up. Same thing too with when you're, um, you know, uh, giving a corn pollen offering or praying in the mornings. You just want to start your day, greet the holy ones. Start your day with what we call, or yeah, with what we call hojo, which is balance. And so, just keeping those positive minds or positive thoughts in your mind when you're running out to the sunrise, and then coming back and then starting the day.
hmm,
And
cool.
so,
So it's open to interpretation though in terms of like distance and you know like the it's the act of doing it more so than there's not like a defined you have to run until the sun comes back up or anything like that
oh
for
no, no,
those
no.
the ceremonial type ones.
Yeah, and I think it just depends on, you usually have a sponsor for your womanhood ceremony, an elder who's well respected in the community, and she kind of sets the rules, and so it tells you like, just go run over there and then come back, and so I think it was probably about a mile or less than a mile each
Okay.
morning, so nothing too big, nothing too crazy. But that's a big part of our culture growing up is just running, and we use running to heal. We use running as medicine, and I've really taken those lessons into my life now. And same thing with Hojo, just trying to find balance and walking in beauty. And so a lot of the adventures that I do, I really just try and keep those positive thoughts in my mind. Just with so much going on in the world these days, it's important to me to remember my culture, remember my heritage, and just take that with me wherever I go.
Yeah, I love that. And that's like one of the things that I'm finding the most joy in ultra running now is I think a connection not like I love watching your connection with your Native American culture and things like that, but I feel like human like mankind in general, there's something natural about running. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think especially long distances and there's just something to your even you mentioned like healing and things like that about it and that's why it's been so cool to see the examples that you share through social media of with the Native American culture specifically, but I've loved seeing how that stuff has kind of felt very very natural for me and for so many runners of it's just like I don't know. It's almost I don't know how to explain it unless you've done it. But there's a point in an ultra where it just feels natural, which is the weirdest thing because you're in a ton of pain. You've been going forever, and you would think it's the last thing you want, but it's what you want,
Mm-hmm.
and it just feels like real. Yeah, I don't. It's almost like it connects us with humans from an evolution perspective, I think. And then it's interesting to see, and this is where I'm so excited to learn from you is like how cultures have used running and I think generally speaking there's probably a lot for us to learn from our ancestors in general.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
I think that generally speaking we're way less healthy than we used to be physically, mentally, emotionally, I mean the whole thing.
Hmm.
And even hearing like this coming of age ceremony of walking with beauty as you so eloquently put it, which is just I love that. And running with the sunrise and with the sunset and there's these little I don't know nuggets of wisdom there that can be applied to other facets of life.
Oh, definitely.
Have you always had have you always had an affinity for your culture or is that something that has happened as you've kind of matured? I'm just kind of, a lot of people kind of go through phases or whatever and then
Yeah.
realize, okay, this is who I am. Have you always had an affinity for your culture and been proud of where you came from?
Yeah, that's a great question. Growing up, you don't really like think about it all that much. Even when I was going through my womanhood ceremony, like not that I kind of just did it because I thought it was what was expected of me. And
You're kind of
then
like going through the motions.
yeah, going through the motions, it was like okay, great. Like, it happens when you get your first period and it happened. And then next thing I know, like my mom's like running around trying to make all these plans. And I was kind of like, all right, yeah, cool. Like we're doing it. Yeah. I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. Just tell me where I need to be and what I need to do. And then, going into high school, I think we all kind of get into those angsty phases of like, don't really care. And just, my mom would tell me things like, Dene people are pretty superstitious. And I kind of would just like brush it off and be like, yeah, whatever. Like, this is not going to do much for me in the long run. But then, as I got a little bit older and then got into college, went to Fort Lewis College, where we've got a pretty diverse class or group of students. Kind of started to like realize the importance and the value of my culture a little bit more, and started to reconnect with it a little bit deeper. And then now, as in adulthood, kind of just understanding the importance and significance of keeping it alive is really important to me. We are very much a minority. We've had to deal with a lot to be where we are today. We have a lot of history of genocide and um, displacement, and so it just seems like it's it's my responsibility to keep our culture alive and to pass that along. And so I'm pretty grateful to have some really great friends and a godchild who is like the cutest little girl ever. And I really work hard to just be a good role model. Excuse me, good role goal. Oh my god, I can't even
Good
talk
role
now.
model.
Good
Yeah.
role model, for her and then for other kids as well. Because without the next generation, our ways die if they're not being taught and passed down.
Tell me more about that. I'm just kind of curious and just want to echo the so I'm pretty proud of it. I produced a commercial that had Navajo spoken in it,
Cool.
and it was really fun for me. We filmed down at Monument Valley, and it's a fun concept with a grandma in a rocking chair, and gosh dang it, I forget the words now. But anyway, the young man says grandma several times in Navajo, and it's a fun commercial because then she basically rips this F-150 through the desert and
Oh
is
my
this like
god.
pro driver, and it's not what you'd
Amazing.
expect. She kind of seemed frail, and so, but it was so fun. But part of that was is I spent time out there and went through the visitor center and ate at the food trucks and just like we just spent time out there, and I left there in awe about I mean, it talked about the Trail of Tears. I mean, all these things. I'm like, holy cow, these stories that, if they're told, aren't told with the weight I think it deserves. Um, I think that it's right in our backyard for so many of us, and we're aware of Native American culture, and I mean, it's part of life. But I don't think at least for me, it was a powerful day of like, holy cow, the significance of you know, everything that went on there just kind of hit me. And I was like, it was powerful. And it's contributed to why I've been so excited to talk with you and why I wish I was running the Monument Valley 50K. But I want to hear from you. I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. Like you mentioned almost a responsibility, but an importance of keeping the culture alive and continuing to I don't know, pass things on to the younger generation and things like that. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about why that matters and the obligation that you kind of feel.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back just a little bit. Trail of Tears, I think, was the Cherokee. The Navajo,
Yeah,
it was the Navajo Long Walk.
thank you.
Yeah, so that brings.
Apologies in advance. I'm going to be horrible
Yeah,
at the
no, and like I said,
terminology.
this is all, it's all about learning and connecting and understanding and yeah. What was the question again? It
The
was
importance of knowing that Ben's going to butcher terminology throughout the conversation. The importance of your obligation to keep the culture alive, to keep the stories being told, and then even further to, be passing it on to like your godchild and, the younger generation. But I want to hear from you why it matters so much.
Yeah, I mean, we're indigenous to this land. There's a lot of our creation stories that are tied to the land. And we all live on this land. And so I think, the first part of accepting where you are and your sense of place is knowing who was here before you were, and just, respecting their way of life as well. When it comes to passing it on to the next generation, we I'm guilty of it too. Like I don't know my language fully. I'm not fluent. And a lot of that comes from just the history um, that we've had to live. My grandparents were forced into boarding schools where they got punished for, practicing their ways and and speaking in their language. And so these things, without us taking the responsibility to pass it down, are going to die. And it's what makes us unique. We've had to deal with years of assimilation into society, and made fun of, mocked, and we deal with that on a day to day basis. And so, when it comes to the importance and the why, it's because our culture is so beautiful. Our attire, the way we talk, it's different, it's unique, it's special. Our creation stories, this is why we live here. This is, I, we as Dene, we're supposed to live within the four sacred summits because this is our homeland.
Hmm.
And, I don't ever see myself leaving here because of that. No matter how bad things get down here or how amazing other places could be, I'll always be here in the Southwest.
You feel that strong of a connection, that strong of a pull.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. My family's here, and this is my home.
Where's your family now?
So most of my family that's still alive, they live in a place called Little Water, in New Mexico. It's right outside of Crown Point.
Awesome.
And so that was about like 40 minutes from where I grew up in Blue Water Village.
Yeah. One more quick anecdote, and then I have some follow-up questions. But you speak about how beautiful the culture is, and I could not agree more. I got the opportunity also to film a powwow,
Cool.
and it was neat. We got to be there for 2 days, and the coolest thing by far, and I'm sure you've seen it probably 100 times. For me, it was the first time, but I'll call it the opening ceremony. But it's like a grand walk where
Mm-hmm.
everybody comes in at the same time, and the
Yeah, the
drums are playing.
grand entry.
Oh, the grand entry! Thank you. Wow. I mean, it was one of the coolest things I've gotten to experience, and it was just so fun to you know, be a fly on the wall and document the cultural significance of the powwow, which again has also contributed to my affinity and curiosity. But I'm curious, you had mentioned, and I want to make sure I understood properly, grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
As recent as your grandparents,
Yep.
boarding school, and all the realities that have come from that. Tell me a little bit more then about like what's the narrative culturally within your family, whatever context you have of, like what do your grandparents tell you about that? Is it like I don't know, is there resentment? Is there pride? Is there like what's kind of what's the new culture that's sort of you know coming to fruition? I didn't realize that as recently as grandparents were going to boarding schools and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. I'd love to hear what's the is it like we have to take some of that back? I don't know, just what's kind of the narrative of the it seems to me like there's a younger generation now with more pride in the culture, and even like you mentioned, you're not fluent but made it a priority to introduce yourself in Navajo, which I think is so neat. I just want to understand a little bit more of the that subculture of like the narrative and how what's the communication between your grandparents, your parents. I mean, how have opinions and I don't know the way that your perspective on things, how are they evolving from grandparents to parents to your generation?
Yeah. I mean, it is pretty crazy when you think about the whole timeline of things that, that was only back in the, 70s, 80s that we still had boarding schools. And there's been a lot that's been going on with boarding schools and finding, mass graves of dead children, from the early 1900s into the 1940s. And so, with that being said, my grandma didn't speak of her days boarding schools. She was a very quiet lady. And we think that the things that she experienced and the things that she saw were too much for her to want to recollect. And so she didn't really share those experiences with us. I think it's different for different families, and depending on which boarding schools they went to, um, there were slash are a ton of boarding schools. There are still active boarding schools on the Navajo Nation, and so I think there's just a lot of generational trauma that our elders are still working through. That we are seeing in our present day, that have just been passed down to their children. Things that we're still having to work through, like, wanting to connect with our culture, but we also don't have a ton of resources out there. It's been really hard for me to learn more about the history of this place,
Hmm.
or the history of this place from the lens of indigenous peoples.
Yeah.
It's always, all of our historians are, they tend to be white. And so it's like, even though there's the history there and the knowledge, we're not seeing it told from, our perspective.
Right.
And so, that's a huge gap that needs to be filled in today's day and age.
Yeah. Coming back to kind of ultra running and things like that, I believe you were involved. Res Duro, I saw
Yeah,
on.
I'm actually wearing the shirt today.
No way. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Um, Tell me about that because if I understood specifically, an endurance event on the reservation, a lot of overlap with cultural significance and endurance. I think it's a bike event, isn't it? Or is
Yeah,
it?
so it's an enduro bike race, which is kind of funny. It's like it's not like a, long distance race like bike packing, which is like also what I've been doing. But an enduro race is a combination between, like endurance, bike riding, and fast, like downhill. So you like, you pedal from stage to stage, and each stage is just like, you're timed on the downhill as fast as you can go. And so I think enduro had 5 stages. It was either 4 or 5 stages, out on a Dineff family's private land.
Oh, cool.
That's a huge challenge right now in the Navajo Nation, is trying to increase outdoor recreation, outdoor
Yeah.
trails. And so that's something that I'm actively working on right now, is increasing accessibility to trails on the Navajo Nation. But the only way we were able to have this bike race was because this family, offered up their land, built the trails, with, friends and family, and then invited, the public out to come ride on them. So yeah, it was, it's a one of a kind bike race. My favorite bike race by far, just also from the cultural perspective, just seeing so many natives out there on bikes. You know, I didn't get to ride a bike until, or like really get into mountain biking until I moved to Durango. My first time riding a bike, I had to like steal my cousin's bike and like ride it around my grandma's, front yard. So seeing the next generation come up and just shred out there. I mean, they are, sending it faster than I am on some of those jumps. And it's just crazy to see them, excelling and just having so much fun too.
What are the barriers? You mentioned like, you know, barriers to the younger generation and everything, recreating it. You mentioned sort of lack of access to trails.
Hmm.
Are there economic barriers? Are there health barriers? Are there culture barriers? Like, what do you think is sort of just from your perspective? What are the things that your or people are working on to make events like that more accessible to to the next generation?
Yeah, I mean, financial barriers are definitely the biggest part. The Navajo Nation, a lot of their people live in poverty, and so I mean, you look at the average price of a mountain bike. Even if you're getting like a hardtail, like not a full suspension, and you're looking upward of $1,000 just for a bike, and then you got to get a helmet, and then same thing too, like accessibility to trails. Not everyone has reliable transportation to travel or go to places, and then also the same thing with registration fees for races. And so it's there's a ton of things that just come into play in getting mountain biking up and running, on the Navajo Nation specifically. But there's organizations that are trying to do more right now. One of them is Silver Stallion, and so same thing with financial barriers. There's no bike shops on the reservation. Even Silver Stallion, who they're not so much a bike shop as they are. They offer uh, group sessions for people to get out on bikes together as a family. They travel across the res and like a mechanic, like a mobile mechanic
Yeah.
setup. And then they've been doing a lot of work to like bring bikes, like actual physical bikes to uh, people on the Navajo Nation. And so they've done a lot to increase accessibility to bikes. And there's still a lot more that can be done. They're only one
Right.
nonprofit based out of Gallup. And the Navajo Nation's huge. That's on the eastern side of the Navajo Nation. You travel across, it's 6 hours to the other side. And so they've
Did,
done a good job with what they've got, but there's still the other barriers.
so interesting side note. Do you follow Paul Johnson on social media by chance?
I don't think so.
So check him out after this. He on March 1st is starting a transcontinental world record attempt run.
Oh, yeah, I just saw one of his like reels on
Yeah.
Instagram. Yeah.
Doing, I think his goal is to do 75 miles a day for 40 days. And I was like, oh,
Crazy.
it might be kind of fun to go, tag along with him a little bit. And I was looking at the map and it goes right through the Navajo reservation.
Oh, cool.
So there might be, you'd have to check it out, but I was surprised at the route because I kind of thought it would follow I-40,
Mm-hmm.
like through Gallup and down. And
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly the towns, but it goes through, it's north of Gallup. Um, Tiknos Post or something like,
Yeah, if it's north of Gallup, it's probably Tachi. Tiknos Pass is 160, so that'd be like
so
over
it's
by
not that.
Kanta.
Yeah. Anyway, check it out after this. It looks really cool. And I'm thinking about maybe, popping down there and sharing some miles with him just
Yeah,
for
do
fun.
it.
But I think how cool that, there's going to be a ton of they've got a news crew and a van and the whole thing, but going right through the current Navajo reservation, which anyway, I think maybe there's a silver lining there. Maybe it
Yeah.
could be cool to
Oh,
get some
definitely.
insight on that. But I want to hear from you too. I've seen kind of some of your goals for this year and some stuff that you've got in the works. Um, Signing up for your first 100 miler. What else is on the docket for Ty, this year?
Oh God, yeah. It's a busy year. I'm turning 35, which seems like a pretty big milestone. It's also my golden birthday. I was born on April 24th and then it's 2024. So,
Cool.
I was like, I got to do it big. Why not? I'm doing Piñons and Pines again, which is a bikepacking ride down in Flagstaff. I did it for the first time last year, got completely rained out, absolutely defeated. It was my first ever DNF. And so, I took it pretty personal. So I'm
Back for
going back.
redemption.
Yeah, back for redemption. We're finishing it this year, and so that'll be happening in May. And then actually going to Nepal for a bike packing trip right after that.
Wow, Nepal.
Yeah, so we're gonna do the Annapurna circuit, which just circumnavigates Annapurna, which is one of the tallest peaks in the world. And yeah, just kind of getting a little bit of a cultural aspect from the Nepal side, and
Yeah.
then they've had a lot of stuff happening in terms of just like over tourism and things like that, and so kind of trying to just shed some light on that as well. Kind of adding cause to that bikepacking trip as well. Um, yeah, 100 miler is the next big one. That'll be the Mogollon Monster in September. And then I've got a couple of other races planned as well. My first race of the season will be Canyon X, which is a half marathon, which is the shortest distance that I have run or will run in a very or have run in a very long time.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I got to get the speed workout going
Yeah.
again, which is kind of funny for half marathon.
Talk to me about intervals. I'll tell you all about it. I've learned
Oh
all
my
about
God.
speed work this last 17 weeks of training that I've been doing.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy to have a hill right next to my house. So just like doing hill repeats and
Yeah.
just trying to work on that speed.
The
But
other day I did hill repeats up college
oh, nice.
up here from
North
basically a
College.
straight shot out from your house, and it worked me.
Oh
If
yeah.
you ever need a good one, I did like 4 or 5 of those. But why? Why
Why?
run 100 miles?
Oh my
Why?
God.
Why? And
You,
because it seems like even, you talk about the Nepal trip or whatever, then that's one of the things I found interesting about you is with all of these adventures, it always seems like there's like some sort of a cause tied to it or a message or, and so I guess it's a multi-part question. you know, Help me understand that. What, like, there's always meaning behind it, and then why in the world do you want to run 100 miles?
oh man. I mean, 100 miler's been on my goal, since that first 50K that I did. For 50K opened my eyes to ultra running as a whole, and then 100 miles just seemed doable. There's an outdoor adventure writer. His name's Brendan Leonard. Semi rad. I don't know if you know him, but check out his stuff. It's
I
pretty
don't.
fun.
I will.
He wrote this really just funny story about how him and his friend decided to send it on the Run Rabbit Run 100 miler and how terrible it was. And after they got done, how great it had felt to just accomplish that. And so, ever since then, I've kind of just had the 100 miler on my list, and I don't know if I'll go bigger. I think 100 miles might be it.
Well, we'll see after you
Um,
run 100 miles.
yeah, I know. I told myself that about 50, and now here we are at
Have you
100.
ran 100K yet?
I haven't run 100K. 50
Okay.
miles is the longest one, and so I'm keeping an eye out for 100K for this summer. Two Shars is kind of calling my name as long as I don't have any other obligations. But yeah, hoping to get 100K in before I do the Mogollon in September.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 100 miles is just to prove to myself I love sleep. I sleep very well. I get a solid 8 hours every night. And so doing something like this, and then same thing with Pinyons and Pines too, of just like trying to push yourself through the night and, see how far you can push yourself and, how fast you can do it, is definitely the motivation for this one. The why on the other side too, uh, you know, representation matters, especially coming back to the indigenous perspective of, just being a role model and, saying that we can do it. Running's in our blood, and there's not a lot of indigenous ultra runners out there.
Yeah.
And so, just again wanting to be a good role model for those kids and showing them what's possible and towing the start line. I run with my hair in a tziel, which is a traditional Navajo bun, and then chi, which is red clay on my cheeks.
Every time?
Most of the time.
Yeah.
There have been a couple times where I've forgotten the chi and it makes me kind of sad, but yeah, so just towing the line with, a bunch of other runners and, being one of very few that are, still you know, practicing that side of wearing chi. Like chi was worn by warriors. And then the tziel is just part of our matrilineal side of the of Dene culture. And so
Yeah.
kind of bringing those two into my love for running. Yeah, just out
Like you're
there.
going to battle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I don't know. Part of me kind of envies that. Like I just think that that's so dang cool, to be able to, you know, like obviously you probably look really cool having chi on your, but then also knowing like that's that another layer of, you know, why
Mm-hmm.
and when to keep going and stuff like that. I think, and that's what I'm interested about is so many times, especially when you're getting into the 100-mile distance, it's going to test everybody. And the more reasons to do it, the better. And, getting to have chi is one of them. I think that's amazing. What's the message you hope you're conveying? What's the, because, you've done I don't know, you've got a decent audience. I mean, you're definitely, I think, becoming at least as it relates to, the Native American culture and ultra running and things like that. With how involved you are in, I mentioned Dr. Our Winters, and I've seen you, up doing like women's split boarding meetups, and you're just very involved in all of these things. What's the message you hope you're conveying? Like, what do you hope people are receiving when they're, whether it's following you on Instagram or listening to a podcast or, towing the line with you at the starting line and you've got the chi on. What's the message you hope that you're delivering? What do you hope people are hearing?
Yeah. Yeah, that we're still here. That's really what it comes down to. Our ancestors, were threatened, by genocide and just complete termination, that, we didn't have the same opportunities as so many other children growing up to excel in these sports. I was never, like I said, I didn't get into mountain biking until I was in, like high school, college. I didn't really start exploring, running as, a bigger part of my life until after that. I ran cross country. But, when I started to see the financial barriers of getting into it, or most people think that running is the cheapest sport out there. But then
Yeah,
as you start to
sure.
get into ultra running, the amount of shoes you go
As you say,
through.
I've got $1,000 worth of shoes
Oh my
in my
God.
truck right now.
Yeah,
You know?
I believe it. But yeah, that we're still here. I get a lot of people who, when they're running with me, they don't know what those things mean. They've never seen a traditional Navajo bun. They don't know what the red clay on my cheeks stands for or signifies. And so, just these little acts that I can do to show that we are still here and that we do care about our culture. That's the message that I hope to get through. And I've had a lot of really great conversations from, other participants in races who have stopped to, have those conversations, have, the conversation that you and I are having right now.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it's an opportunity to educate and show the world that there's so much more than, the Western civilization that we're currently growing up in.
I don't know if you know Josh Rosenthal or if you follow
Yeah,
him or not with Run Borderlands. I had him on the podcast,
cool.
and he had a line that just is like so true. And he's, if you're an ultra runner, you're at least a part-time philosopher, and I love that. And
So
that's
true.
one of the coolest things I think about the ultra running community is those conversations, like you had mentioned, and to be sharing miles with people and getting to share some story and some cultural significance and things like that. I just think and I just think that your perspective on it is especially powerful because of the underrepresentation. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I've been so excited to pick your brain on it is it's how often do you get to sit down and talk to somebody like you? Very, very rare, very,
Hmm.
very uncommon, and I think remarkable. The story to be told there. What's that like? What's it like? Because here you are, obviously tons of pride and you're wearing your culture well, I think representing it well. You also though are living in Durango. You've got a corporate job, but you've got a job and
Yep.
but then you're doing these great things from a endurance athletics involvement perspective. Like what do your parents think? What do your family what's kind of the impression of who Ty's turning into, with your family and things like that? What's that like?
Yeah, I would say my family's pretty proud of me. My I was the first one. My brother and I are pretty close, but we both are the first in our family to, on my mom's side anyway, to have graduated from college. My mom didn't graduate from college. She had me when she was really young, and so she didn't get that opportunity. And she's actually back in school right now, and I'm so proud of her
Cool.
for going back and
Is she at
um,
the fort? Cool.
so yeah, so it's been really fun to just like see her own journey as well. But um, you know, I, I'll hold my tongue when it comes to the corporate world side. I'm a little salty about that, but when it comes to Osprey, I love my job there, and the fact that it allows me to stay in the outdoor industry. I've worked with ski areas. I worked at the magazine, the outdoor publication, and just being able to tie my passion to what I love doing. I do enjoy marketing. I enjoy helping other people with their own goals and things like that too. And being able to do that for Osprey, a company that has helped shape me as an athlete too. I've had Osprey packs for backpacking, for running, for mountain biking. All of my sports have been powered by Osprey, and so um, I love that side of it. And I'd say my family's pretty proud of what I've done, what I'm doing. A lot of what I do is still to try and help and support my family as well. Sending them money when I can, and just we try and stay really close and just help each other out when we can. And so,
Yeah.
um, Yeah, it is kind of funny though from like the Dene side. Like when I tell the elders like what I do and I say marketing, I think even in Western culture sometimes like people don't know what marketing
Yeah.
means. And so I tell them that and they're like, "What? Like what are you doing?" Like that makes no sense to me, like they think, they see the pride in like artists and cooks and people who have these like very utilitarian or beautiful professions. And so that kind of makes me a little bit sad sometimes that I don't have the time for that. But I kind of look at my achievements and my passion for the outdoors as an art as well.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
100%. And I feel like, and that's what I love about ultra running is it's a microcosm for life I mean, sit and talk about that for hours on hours on hours,
oh yeah.
But I think one of the cool things is, the act of ultra running is like by nature overcoming adversity and breaking through barriers and doing these things that aren't normally perceived as doable or things like that. And I think that there might be some really cool parallels with, you talked about kind of the oppressive nature of the, culture and things like that of like, I don't know. I feel like there might be some cool parallels with the fact that you're showing that you can do hard things when the odds are stacked against you, and that we're still here. To your point, we're alive and well, and crushing it. By the way, and almost paving a path for others to do their version of that, which it might not be ultra running, but like seeing that there's these opportunities out there, and this whole wide world of experiences and things like that. I just think it's cool the kind of the parallels of running through barriers, but then what it symbolizes too. And I just feel like that's some messaging that probably needs to be amplified with, especially in the Native American culture and things like that. I'm coming from a perspective of, want to see everybody thrive,
Hmm.
want to see everybody live the life that they want to live and be happy, find joy, simple stuff. But
Totally.
I think that the more message we can get out about that, the better. And I think especially to underrepresented cultures and, things like that. I just kind of been, I don't know, I've just been thinking about the parallels and how it all ties in.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, my goal with the work that I do is that in the next 20 years when you're still doing this podcast, you're not bringing, diverse people here because they are part of the norm. There's not a need for, full representation because we have more indigenous
Yeah,
runners.
like you
We
don't
have
even have to try.
professional indigenous athletes. I mean, I could name the like professional indigenous athletes that we know on one hand. And I want, in 20 years, I want the next generation, the ones that I'm hoping to help find their own paths. I want them to be, setting records and,
Yeah.
living their best lives and yeah, towing the line and taking first, second, third place. It's starting to happen right now, but we still have so much work to do. And so, that's my dream is just seeing so much more diversity on the starting line.
What can we do to help with that? Like what would be, are there indigenous races we should be signing up for? Are there, things we should be supporting? What would be, just generally speaking, kind of, because I agree 100%, 20 years from now, it'd be great to not even have to have the conversation,
Oh, totally.
that everybody's represented and, it's just a runner, not a, Native American runner or whatever it might be. But would love to hear from you on that. Like what would be just those conscious things that, folks listening and myself can pay attention to and do more of or sign up for? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, from a race standpoint, there's not too much going on. I mean,
Should we do one? Should we
again,
host one?
oh man, there's
A little
I might I
idea.
might I might be I might have some things in the
All
works.
right.
I'll keep you posted. But I can't speak for, all tribes obviously, but like here in the Southwest, Navajo Yes does a really good job of their race series. All of it takes place on Navajo lands. Monument Valley Ultra is actually a Navajo Yes
Oh, cool.
race. They also do, a ton throughout the year. There's a whole series. But all their proceeds go towards helping with I think it's called Youth Empowerment Services. And it's just, helping kids get out and getting them, the resources they need to start getting into running and biking and things like that. At Res Duro, we talked about Res Duro.
Yep.
That's a great one. I don't know what the dates are for that one quite yet for this year. Um, but yeah, to your point, like supporting those, supporting indigenous businesses. If you're going to ski, Sunrise Ski Area is actually Apache owned. I think it's the only indigenous owned ski area in the US. I could be wrong, but yeah, like looking at indigenous owned businesses in your area, buying from indigenous peoples, there's a lot of, um, you know, arts out there that have been appropriated. And just knowing where the art comes from. Like if you love indigenous art, do the educate or do yeah do your part to research where the pieces are coming from, or
Yeah.
what like where the patterns come from. Like we all have our own special designs and things like that. um and yeah, so I think like there's a bunch of other initiatives that are starting to come out of the woodwork. Again, we haven't really had the resources or the ability to expand on some of these ideas, but I can't talk too much about it quite yet. But I've got some stuff in the works too that I'm really hoping to start launching in the next 2 to 3 years of just ways that I can help the Navajo Nation,
Yeah.
and help with like some of these races or other business plans and things like that too.
Make
So
sure I'm on the list.
I will.
Anything we can do to help, I'm
Thank
there for
you.
that in a huge way.
Cool. I appreciate that.
Ty, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for living the life that you're living. Thanks for letting me live vicariously through it sometimes on Instagram and, see how cool Havasupai is and all that stuff. But more importantly, thanks for representing what you're representing and for, just being such a good example of a high performer with a great background that tells, really neat stories and just honoring, the places that we live and the adventures that we go on and things like that. I think in such a powerful, powerful way. And so I have a present for you. I told you it
Oh.
was a surprise, but you saw it before. But these are my Inspired by Example shirts. And I want you to have it because
Thank
you're
you.
living an example. You're living a life by example that is inspiring so many people, and it matters. The representation matters, but even just the 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 life you're living. I mean, even if remove the cultural elements and the healthy nature of it, and how great it is to be outside and be adventuring and living this rich life that you're living. You inspire me by your example. So thank you so much for doing it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing a little bit of insight with me, and thanks for making me a little bit better today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. Thanks you. Thank you.